when you meet someone as bright as a neon. Everyone else is just a floating cloud. The first time Julie saw Bryce, she was impressed by his bright and charming eyes. She volunteered to help with the move, but the father and son didn't appreciate it.
No. Why don't you run along home? Your mother's probably wondering where you are.
When Bryce tries to get rid of Julie, they accidentally hold hands. Bryce is embarrassed, but Julie misunderstands Bryce and believes he likes her too. From then on, Julie becomes the tail that Bryce can't get rid of, and even the classmates approve of their relationship.
Bryce and Julie sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G.
Bryce avoids it. Julie enjoys it. It wasn't until 6th grade that Bryce came up with a brilliant idea to kill Julie. He took the initiative to date the prettiest girl in school, Shirley, and deliberately walked in front of her, successfully causing Julie sadness. But it doesn't last long. A friend who also likes Shirley betrays Bryce, and Bryce becomes single again. Julie is so happy that she doesn't care about Bryce's betrayal, and she still stalks him and smells his scent like she used to. She takes her love for Bryce for granted. She likes to watch her dad paint. Dad asked her what she liked about Bryce. She said she liked his eyes and his smile. Daddy said looking at people is like painting. You can't just look at the parts sometimes, the whole is better than the sum of the parts. Julie didn't understand her dad's meaning until one day she climbed up a sycamore tree to reach a kite, and the view from the rooftop instantly captivated her. The breeze was beautiful. Everything was fragrant. The sunset was hot, and it became a small world for her mind, and she spent hours up there every day. She also gradually understood the concept of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. As her father said, she wanted to share this different view with Bryce.
Bryce, you should come up here. It's so beautiful.
But Bryce always avoided it. Not only that, but he made a joke of her, just like the other kids. But Julie didn't care. Until one day, the lumberjack wanted to cut down the sycamore tree. She panicked and asked Bryce to climb up with her. Maybe if there were more people in the tree, the lumberjack wouldn't cut it down. But
Bryce, please don't let them do this.
Bryce did not want to accompany her to fool around, and did not look back on the school bus. At that moment, Julie felt for the first time that the Bryce she had been missing was so strange. She didn't go to school that day and stayed in the tree for a long time. The whole town came. The fire truck also came. And finally only her father could persuade her. Dad understood that the tree was very important to her, but there are things we just have to let go of.
It's time.
Losing the sycamore tree was like losing her spiritual world, and she cried at home for 2 weeks. Suddenly, one day, her father brought back her sycamore tree.
I never wanted you to forget how you felt when you were up there.
From then on, the first and last thing she did every day was to look at the sycamore tree in the painting. She became more aware of the concept of the sum of the whole and the parts, so her perspective on things around her changed, and it seemed that all of a sudden she felt differently about Bryce. Time to heal one. She won first place in the science fair and raised chickens in her backyard. When she has more eggs than she can eat, the first person she wants to share them with is Bryce. But Bryce's father often teases her about the weeds and the salmonella in the eggs, so Bryce gives them back. But Bryce didn't have the courage to face Julie, so he secretly threw the eggs into the garbage. Every day, Julie gives him the eggs with a happy heart, and he welcomes them with a false smile, but then turns around and throws them in the trash. Finally, Julie saw him once and Bryce confessed that her father was too dirty for her. Julie couldn't believe it.
How could you?
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
Now Julie was completely hurt by Bryce. Before the dinner, the two brothers sang and the family
like yours for me, ooh-wee.
Atmosphere was very cozy. But Julie had something on her mind. She asks her parents to plant grass and build a fence in the yard. She wants to salvage not Bryce's opinion but her dignity. But to her surprise, this proposal triggered a fight between her parents. It turns out that Julie has a mentally handicapped uncle, and the family uses all the extra money to pay for his medical care, so they are living in a very tight budget. Dad thinks it's the landlord's business to fix the yard, and Mom bursts out when she sees that her daughter is disliked.
I'm tired of having to take 10 jobs just to make ends meet. I'm tired of having to push a chair up against the washing machine just to keep the door shut. I'm tired of having to borrow Mrs. Stubby's vacuum cleaner every time ours breaks down.
Do you think this is the life I pictured for us?
Well, maybe we should start thinking about what's right for us. Our daughter is suffering because we won't fix up our own yard. Maybe it's time we consider government care.
We are not moving my brother!
He's more important than your own children.
Dad!
How dare
Stop
you!
it, Dad!
This was their first fight. That night, her parents came to the room to apologize to her. Dad said that he had promised his grandparents that he would take care of his uncle. And Mom said she loved Dad very much, loved his strength and kindness. Julie felt bad for what happened to them, but she was lucky to have such parents. So she decided to mow the yard all by herself. On the other hand, Bryce realizes that he has gone too far. But no matter how much he tries to impress Julie, he ignores him. He should be happy that no one was bothering him and that he was free. But the reality was that he was lost. Until Grandpa appeared and changed his judgment of Julie. Grandpa misses his dead grandmother so much that he doesn't communicate with his family. The first time he communicated with Bryce was when Julie got in the way of cutting down a tree and made the headlines. He said Julie was a girl with a backbone. At the time, Bryce didn't care about it. But now, Grandpa is helping Julie fix up the yard again, and they seem to be talking endlessly. This made Bryce look more and more depressed. Grandpa saw Julie's wife in him, stubborn and passionate. He teaches Julie to do a lot of work and agrees with the concept that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And he told Julie that some people are greater than the whole and some people are less than the whole. It was this inspiration that made Julie realize that Bryce was a person whose whole was less than the sum of its parts. That day Bryce got up the courage to apologize to her, but she didn't care anymore. But she envied Bryce for having a good grandfather. In the evening, Bryce's father teases the Julie family as he did before, which causes Grandpa to be very upset. Dad and Grandpa go head to head. Grandpa says angrily that Julie's family is poor because she has an uncle who is mentally retarded because his umbilical cord is wrapped around his neck. At this point, Mom left sadly. Bryce was also born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, but the doctor was able to save him in time. Grandpa took Bryce to the sycamore tree that had been cut down and said the words that would enlighten him for the rest of his life.
She's quite a girl. Some of us get dipped in flat. Some in satin, some in gloss. But every once in a while, you find someone who's iridescent. And when you do, nothing will ever compare.
For the first time, Bryce thought hard about the girl he had never looked at before. He thought about what she had seen and thought in the sycamore tree, about all the indifference he had shown to her. From then on, he couldn't help but peek at Julie. Later, the newspaper about Julie, he often took it out to read it, and was accidentally discovered by his friend, who criticized his feelings for Julie as a mere illusion, and teased Julie for having a retarded uncle, saying by the way that Julie also had retarded genes. Bryce was so angry that he wanted to punch him, but what came out of his mouth was a concurrence. He doesn't want to see his friend again, and he doesn't want to care what people say. He's sure he likes Julie, but he didn't know that Julie had overheard their conversation. Julie is also sure that she doesn't like Bryce anymore. Bryce's mother invites Julie's family to dinner, which is good news for Bryce. He picks out his clothes over and over again, hoping to look his best for Julie. But when they arrive, Julie throws him a big cold shower.
You look nice.
I heard you and Garrett making fun of my uncle in the library, and I don't want to speak to you. Not now, not ever.
Bryce doesn't want to give up. He pulls Julie in again and explains that he was just in the way of not hitting his friend on the spot in the library. Julie calls him a coward. At the dinner table, Bryce's dad always tries to belittle Julie's family by saying that her two older brothers won't get into college, but they're actually being snapped up by colleges. He falls silent when talking about the fact that they are passionately pursuing their musical dreams. Turns out he was a great instrumentalist too. Julie didn't look at Bryce all night, and Bryce knew he wasn't forgiven. He also realized that his dad's love of making fun of others was really just a cover for his own incompetence. Maybe he's a coward like Dad who's afraid to admit the reality that Julie has made him unreachable. Soon the school will hold a fundraising auction and the girl with the highest bid will have lunch with the boy who is auctioned off. He is excited that Julie will be participating and hopes that he will be auctioned off by Julie, but he is also very apprehensive. Actually, Julie was also very conflicted. She hadn't wanted to bring money because she was worried that she would be involuntarily bidding on Bryce. She didn't want to bid, and she didn't want to see Bryce go to Shirley, whom she hated. But as fate would have it, the neighbor's wife had to pay her back for the eggs halfway through the auction. When the auction reached the 8th boy, no girl was willing to bid. Looking at the fat student who was despondent, the kind Julie painfully shot him in order to save the situation. And
$8.
not surprisingly, Bryce was taken by Shirley.
50.
At lunch, they sat in pairs, Shirley chatting away but Bryce not listening to her. Julie does the same thing. Suddenly Bryce had the courage to go over to Julie, pull her up and kiss her. Although it was the kiss Julie had been waiting for, she didn't want it to be this way.
Bryce, stop it!
Bryce tries to chase Julie, but his friend stops him and says he shouldn't miss his date with Shelley because of a girl who smells like chicken shit. Now Bryce finally stops being a wimp.
Shut up!
Julie locked herself in her room for days, and Bryce avoided her many times, and she didn't answer her phone. She just wanted to be left alone. Then Bryce stopped bothering her. 2 days later Bryce showed up again and dug a hole in front of her house. She was angry at first, until she laughed when Bryce pulled out the sapling. Yes, it was a sycamore tree. When Julie walked out the door, she saw the same sparkling eyes again. It was their first heart-to-heart meeting, just like the first heartbeat. In fact, Bryce had liked Julie from the beginning, but he was too shy to be true to himself like Julie, and he was too concerned about what other people thought. He wanted to escape Julie's entanglement but couldn't leave her. Fortunately, his grandfather woke him up and made him understand that he had met the colorful person. Every once in a while, you find someone who's iridescent, and when you do, nothing will ever compare.